And I'd love to know what you think, because I got to tell you, all of a sudden, I'm hearing nothing about the Russian boogeyman. Biden won, and I'm just hearing nothing. I mean, we're safe again. The threat has been neutralized. Obviously, I'm joking, but it just, you know, Biden wins, the Democrats won, so Russia is no longer a threat.
Yeah, isn't that amazing that we don't hear about Russian troll farms and Russian Facebook ads really swaying voters and infiltrating Black Lives Matter and different activist groups and stuff like that to try to like swing the election. I mean, it was just the most disgusting narrative pushed out there, and it was used for 4 years to try to usurp like Trump, and all it did was help him. It really, really helped him, because I think a lot of people just didn't understand why the Democrats were doing this and why they were trying to paint Trump as some sort of like Russian spy. There was never any evidence behind it. There was a million other crimes that he was committing that they could have gotten him on. And so it was just a disgrace at the end of the day that amounted to nothing except further distrust in like the corporate media establishment, which then just allowed this siphoning from the Trump camp into like the fake news narrative, right? That everything that the corporate media was saying, even if it was true about his administration, was fake news. And so it really bit them in the ass at the end of the day. And it's curiously absent from the discourse now, right? Just like the voter fraud narrative was curiously absent back in 2016 when Trump won. I didn't hear anyone saying it was a rigged election then. So it's just these narratives only are pushed out there when they serve different factions of the establishment. And it's just all partisan nonsense. And I'm sure this isn't the last we're going to hear about Russia. I'm sure Biden, like he said, he wants to punish Putin. I don't know what that means. Trump was already putting a ton of sanctions on Russia during his administration. He was not easy on Russia at all. So I just fear what will happen next, because I believe in diplomacy and I believe in working relationships with countries around the world, especially in the time of a global pandemic. So it worries me when I hear rhetoric such as what Biden's talking about.
And what I think also is it's kind of dangerous, because with Trump, you got the reflexive, fake news to anything critical, whatever. And people were brainwashed by that. And literally, I've gone around the country. I mean, Trump supporters think none of it's true. Not one story is true. But Biden and the Democrats started doing that in a different way, just screaming Russian disinformation when there were negative stories. I mean, the Hunter Biden thing, there's legitimately questions whether Joe Biden met with a Burisma executive and then, tried to get a prosecutor fired. But he just kept screaming Russian disinformation. And then the corporate media did his bidding, regurgitating the same lines. So if more were to come out about Hunter Biden or any role with Joe Biden or anything having to do with corruption, it seems to me the Democrats' line now and Biden's new line is this is a Russian disinformation campaign.
Exactly. Joe Biden was so embarrassing because he was asked about this several times on the campaign trail. And one of the times that he was asked about this, I think we talked about this on the podcast, Jordan, he literally said, like, listen, fats, to an overweight man, and said, like, I'm not sedentary, like challenging him to a push-up contest. I mean, it was bat crazy. Like the fact that this guy just simply talked about potential corruption with Hunter Biden, which of course existed. Why would Hunter Biden be making $50,000 a month sitting on Burisma? He had no experience. It was clearly a quid pro quo with the VP at the time, like obvious, right? And the fact that Joe Biden like wasn't coached, and of course he was, right? But that just shows you like how off the rails he was. Like he should have been coached over and over again, saying like, answer this in a really diplomatic way. Like people are going to confront you about this, Joe. Like this is a huge issue. And this is like all the Republicans are making, they tried to do a Pizzagate style, Podesta leaks on him right before the election. It was supposed to be their October surprise. It failed, right? But it could still come up. It could still come up. And I think it will come up. And Joe Biden needs to understand how to discuss this like in a rational way and needs to respond to this. And the fact that he just shut down any criticism, calling it a Russian disinformation campaign, is just like offensive. It's offensive because we all understand that it's not. Like it exists. The leaks are real. And you need to address this, Biden. So yeah, they're going to keep using that boogeyman, and they're not going to stop. And it's a disgrace, Jordan, because it just shows you the Democrats have learned nothing, right? This is like the party that's just such a sick, sad joke. They continue to just shoot themselves in the foot. They learn nothing from their mistakes, and they're just going to pave the way for a second, like, fascist takeover, because they can't ever hold themselves accountable.
And I'd love your thoughts, because obviously Obama, when he got in, immediately, we're not looking backwards. We don't want to investigate, no charges, or looking into Bush or his war criminals that pushed Iraq. And now you're hearing Biden, before he gets inaugurated, starting to talk about, I think investigations into Trump would be, divisive, and we need to look forward. I mean, listen, I don't think Trump is on par with, the Iraq war. His crimes were most, money laundering and things like that. But, I think he could be prosecuted for child separation and several other terrible things. But it kind of, it's one of those things, like George Carlin said, it's a big club and you ain't in it. It seems like if every incoming president basically pardons or shields the previous president's crimes, then why would the president, obey the law?
Yeah, Trump's not going to be prosecuted for anything. And that's what's so funny. People keep speculating like, oh, Trump's going to be held accountable. His family's going to go to jail. It's like, are you crazy? Like, why on earth would you think that the Democrats would do this? Biden's entire presidential campaign has been on restoring the character and soul of America. Completely meaningless platitudes that have no application of policy, nothing directing toward lifting the millions that are suffering in poverty in this country, millions who have lost their healthcare and jobs during the pandemic. There is absolutely nothing that is speaking to those people. It is just bizarre, like Pete Buttigieg style rhetoric that's saying like, this is about one America, right? We're gonna join together and not be divided anymore. It's like, all right, man, like that's really all you're running on. And that really was what he was running on, was just that he wasn't Trump. So no one's going to be prosecuted from the Trump administration. If they wanted to prosecute Trump on something, there was so many emoluments clause things that he was violating from the very beginning. Like he shouldn't even have been qualified to run as a presidential contender. So the fact that he was president for 4 years, profiting tremendously off of his name with all of the government officials that he was meeting with around the world and raking in millions of dollars for his family, none of that is going to ever see the light of day in terms of accountability. Just like how Nancy Pelosi just got re-elected to run the Democratic leadership. It just reminds me, Jordan, when I really was taken aback back during 2006, I think, when she said impeachment was off the table for George W. Bush. And because Obama had that mantra of looking forward, not backward, that is why we're in the situation that we're in today, because we never held the Bush administration accountable for their war crimes, for killing 1 million Iraqis in the Middle East, for torture. We are in the situation where the neoliberals are just a hollow shell, and the fascists continue to be emboldened. And that's where we're going to go. We're just going to keep seeing this divide widen and widen, because there's never any accountability and there's never any introspection on how they can actually build a party that represents the working class. And so we're going to keep seeing people sit the elections out. And as much as we hear about people of color really winning this election for Joe Biden, which I'm sure that there were a lot of people of color who mobilized in really great ways to unseat the threat from the White House, you see cities like Milwaukee, Philadelphia, Chicago, that actually less people in general voted for Biden than they did Hillary Clinton. And you see majority Black rural areas across the Bible Belt that voted for Clinton more than they did Biden. So you really have to look at the complexities of the electoral arena and understand that there's a lot that we don't understand with these sexy narratives that are being pushed out by the mainstream. And they really need to be taken a look at, because things are just going to get worse. And when you have such a huge block that just doesn't engage at all, I fear what's next, Jordan, when the pandemic is just going to keep going on and on with no end in sight.
Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com, where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.